Hi, everyone, and welcome to Behind the Numbers. This is the podcast that explores the people and the insights behind business success. I am Dave Bookbinder, and I'm known as a business valuation expert and best-selling author. Numbers tell a story, but they don't tell the whole story, so let's go behind the numbers. Today's guest is Cass Bailey. She is the founder and CEO of Slice Communications, a strategic communications agency that helps organizations earn the attention through integrated PR, social media, and brand storytelling. Cass has spent more than 2 decades in communications. She's authored a few books on the subject. She's built a respected agency and has become a recognized voice on leadership and communication strategy. Today, we're going to talk about her entrepreneurial journey, leadership, and how companies can communicate more effectively in today's environment. Cass, welcome to Behind the Numbers.
Thank you so much, Dave. I'm glad to be here.
It is my pleasure. Let me take you into the Wayback Machine, to the very beginning for you. What originally led you to start Slice Communications?
It was a lovely combination of an accident and a moment in time. I never intended to be an entrepreneur, Dave. That was not my plan. I thought I was going to go work at big companies and, maybe even be a lawyer at some point, but none of that ended up being in the cards. I followed the opportunities that were presented to me and got to work in PR and litigation support and got to work in economic development where I learned a lot about M&A and venture capital and investing and growing businesses. And so when this firm was started in 2008, it really was because there was this opportunity to bring social media and PR together as the primary way that companies were going to communicate with people, not advertise to them, not market to them, but really communicate in a two-way conversation. And so that was the originating idea behind the agency.
Yeah, it's funny. The accidental entrepreneur, that really resonates with me because I always tell people I'm an accidental author and podcast host, never intended to write a book. So I totally get that.
But the
Sometimes
opportunity came, right, Dave?
just say yes when the opportunity shows up, right? That's what I
That's
tell
right.
people all the time.
hmm
Opportunity knocks, just open the door.
Yes.
So, Cass, what were some of the hardest parts of the early years in building the business?
Well, the business was founded in February 2008. And at the time, we didn't know about the economic crisis that was going to hit all of us in September and October of that year. And so in the early days, it was full of optimism and we were super excited. But then we, had this hardship that everybody had. We were fortunate, though, because we were in this startup position to not have a whole lot of overhead, to still not have a whole lot of people at the time, but to be able to add a lot of value to our clients as they were communicating through crisis and change. And so we were, I would say, like an affordable option, but still like a very high value option at the time. And that put us in a great position to be able to bring on clients who needed that guidance and advice during that time, who needed good PR during that time when there was so much bad news, and who really wanted to do interesting things on social media to communicate through what was the Great Recession.
Yeah, obviously, Great Recession was impactful for everyone. And I've had many business owners on this program. We've talked about that. And in general, the emotional roller coaster that is business ownership. Any other moments that really tested you?
Well, as the company grew, we had to start adding people, of course, and that is always a moment of test to say, okay, how do we want to add people? How many people? Who are the right people? And that was a challenge. Always continues to be a challenge in the business, but especially in the early days as you're starting to think about how do I want to lead a company through others? That's a challenge. And there were some false starts and there were some great people and we were very fortunate along the way, but that was certainly a testing point. And then as the company grew and developed, we had to get our first office because we started out of our homes. That was an interesting testing point. And by 2010, the company was really solid and on a great footing. But those first 2 years were a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll talk more about the people element in the business a little bit later on in this conversation. But I have heard you speak about acquisitions and reacquiring your business.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that story and the experiences about leadership and ownership that you learned there.
Yeah. So the company grew pretty quickly between 2010 and 2012, and we sold it at the end of 2012, a majority of the business, a majority of the shares. And the reason was that we were looking at the business, and because myself in particular, I was not an intentional entrepreneur. Like I mentioned, I was very much an accidental entrepreneur. I didn't know very much about the business of the business. I didn't really understand it. And I really was starting to experience some challenges as it related to scaling. So one of the things that we did early on was we put together an advisory board, a group of 3 advisors that were really smart. And every quarter we'd meet with them and we'd bring them our challenges. And one of our advisors made an introduction to a company that was struggling very much so with delivering a social media product, a social media service to their clients. And so we came in and we helped them with that, and we fixed some things and we showed them good strategy and we put in place some processes. And by the end of 2012, that company had offered to buy us. And it seemed like a good idea at the time. 14 months later, I bought the company back. So there was a lot of lessons learned and hardship in there. Um, I- we were young at the time. I think I was 31 when I sold the company, and it had only been around for a couple of years. So I learned a lot as it relates to what it takes to make an acquisition successful and where there are landmines and bombshells that can completely destroy an acquisition.
Yeah. I want to shout out and congratulate you for putting together an advisory board. Yeah, I'm also a Vistage member, and business owners often feel like they need to know everything, and conversely, often feel like they don't know anything. And putting together an independent advisory board is just absolutely critical. And kudos to you for doing that. So, folks out there who are listening who have thought about it, highly recommend. So, Cass, as you have scaled the business, have you noticed any changes in your leadership style through that process?
A lot. When I bought the business back, I realized that I didn't know half of what I needed to know. That I even went into the transaction of selling completely blind without very much understanding. Even though we did have the guidance of the advisory board, I didn't know very much. So, one of the things I did when I bought the company back was I was fortunate to be able to take part in the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program, which really taught me the basics of business that I didn't know. I mean, Dave, I have a degree in international politics, economics, and philosophy. Like, I learned what a P&L was because I sat on some boards of nonprofits. Like, I didn't really know what it was. I certainly didn't know what a balance sheet was. I really had no idea about cash flow management or anything like any of those sort of things. And I didn't know the HR regulations that I needed to know. So I went through the 10,000 Small Businesses program, but then I also, through WeBank, which is the Women's Business Enterprise National Council, it's all certified WBEs, got to go to a program at the Tuck School of Business as well, where I learned more about business best practices. And then I joined EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization, and I learned more about it. And then I got in my EO forum, which is not unlike a Vistage group. And I got to learn a lot more about business. And then I got very fortunate and somebody recommended EOS to us, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And so we put that in place in 2016. And so I think what happened as an accidental entrepreneur when I bought my company back, I had to learn the business of business. And that I've absolutely enjoyed. I was a PR practitioner for a number of years. I'm not so much a PR practitioner anymore, though I do a lot of the crisis work with our clients. But I love the business of business. And so any opportunity that I have to learn about it, to read whatever books I can, to talk to folks about it, to go to conferences, that's really where I think my leadership has come from. Whereas a lot of people who are accidental entrepreneurs never fall in love with the business of business, I've been able to. And that extends to management, that extends to leadership, that extends to working more on the business than in the business. That extends to spending a lot of time with my clients trying to understand not just their communications, but like their businesses. How does it function? How does it operate? What does operational excellence look like for them? And having those conversations.
Yeah, that's amazing. And in my work, first of all, kudos on EOS. It's a great way to stay organized and hold people accountable and really, find goals that are achievable and track towards them and measurable. But when we talk about the getting into the business and working on the business and working in the business, a lot of my work comes from attorneys, and a lot of them have left big law and they're solopreneurs. They've created their own firms. Many of them have built substantial practices. And I asked them the question, how do you feel about being the CEO? And some of them say, I never really thought of myself as a CEO. Others have said it has been quite the learning curve. We're trying to embrace the idea of actually running a business as opposed to just doing what I do. And I see that a lot too. Excuse me. in the trades as well, where folks are very, very good at a particular skill. But the idea of running a business, they don't always grasp. So it is a process.
It is. And I have this conversation now with entrepreneurs when they're getting started or they're early in their journey. And I ask them the question, what do you want your business to be when it grows up? Do you want to have a lifestyle business that supports your lifestyle and, like makes it possible for you to take care of your family and go on great vacations? Or do you want to have a scalable business? Like, are you looking to build something that eventually somebody will buy from you? Because it has value above you and outside of you as the owner or the founder. And I wish somebody had asked me that question when I was first starting out, because the way that you build the business is dependent on what you want from it and how you want from it. If you want to have a lifestyle business, that is a great option, and you never really have to step fully into the CEO role. You get to be the practitioner and you get to run the business the way you want to run it, and you work the hours you want to work, and that's great. But know that the other side of that coin is that when you're done with it, it's unlikely that there will be a saleable asset. Okay? If you want to have a scalable business, then you have to step into that CEO role. You don't have a choice because the business asks that and requires it of you.
Yeah, that's what we call a tweetable moment, what you said right there. So, so true. And that's why so many businesses fail to really scale above critical mass, call it 5 million. And it's so hard to get from 5 to 10 and almost impossible to get from 10 to 20 because of that exact mindset.
Yeah, I
So,
find that I have to rewrite my job description as CEO probably at least once a year, sometimes more often, because what the business needs of its CEO will change as it grows and develops.
yeah, for
And
sure.
as you add new people to your leadership team and people elevate and escalate in the business, like what this CEO is responsible for should change. It should never be static. It should be completely dynamic. So I really encourage people to rewrite your job description at least every year to understand what it is that the business needs from you, and then communicate to everybody within the company that this is what this is what the business needs from me today, and that's why my role, my responsibilities, what I'm focused on is going to change.
Yeah, that's solid advice for everybody out there listening to this show. So I want to marry your experience in the communication space and your leadership communication. Are there any common communication mistakes that you're seeing leaders are making pretty often?
So many, but the primary one is that some leaders are not intentional in terms of how they communicate. It's not just what you communicate. It's not just the words that you say. And a lot of people spend a lot of time thinking about the words. It is very much the energy with which you make that communication, the methodology in which you deliver the communication, and the feeling that you want to create for your team, whether that's your internal team or whether externally it's your clients. So let's unpack that a little bit. People spend a lot of time like writing down, here's what I want my speech to be, and then spend very little time thinking about, how am I going to use my facial expressions, my body language? Here's how I'm going to bring a story to this speech. Here's how I'm going to use the speech that I wrote this one time to create talking points that I'm going to start to sprinkle into every interaction that I have with my audience. And so they don't think about all of those components of communication, and they often think of it as a one off. Well, I told them that in my speech on July 15th. They should know it. No, that's not how people receive information. It used to be that you had to tell somebody something 7 times for it to
Right.
break through. Now, with all of the information that we have at our fingertips, it's closer to 11 to 13. So a speech, a state of the company, etc., is not a one-time communication, and people make that mistake all the time.
Yeah, I think as humans, we have the attention span that's shorter than that of a goldfish.
7 seconds. Yeah.
Yes. So, yeah,
But Dave, that's another great point, right? Like a big mistake that people make is that they're like, I'm going to do a 45-minute talk, or I'm going to do a 2-hour meeting. No, people remember maybe the first 15 minutes, maybe the last 15 minutes, but they'll miss everything in the middle unless there's something highly and emotionally charged for them. So that's another mistake to your point. They communicate much too long, or they talk much too much without effectively communicating.
talking just for talking. Noted as your host here. So I want to talk to you about a word that that has been discussed many times here in this program. And it just actually came up in a conversation I had with a group of interns at our company this week. We were talking about authentic leadership, the authenticity. I want to get your take on what does it mean to be communicating authentically as a leader?
When you're communicating authentically, what that actually means is communicating from a place of truth. And a lot of leaders don't know their truth. They don't know what their purpose is. And if they do, they don't necessarily weave it into their communication. They don't know what their passion is. And if they do, they don't necessarily weave it into the communication. They think so much about, okay, here's the role that I have to play. I need to look like this CEO that mentored me when I was young, or I need to communicate like this leader of a company that leads one of my competitors because they do a really good job. And they do that instead of like looking at their truth. Like, who are you as a person? And ask yourself some really hard questions. For instance, when I retire, what do I want people to say about me? How do you want to be remembered as a leader? Not how you think people will talk about you. What do you want them to say about you? Different things. Okay. Understand that. Understand when I am in a moment of crisis or challenge, how do I naturally bring my whole self to that moment? All of my assets, some of my fears, some of my concerns, really all the strengths that I bring. How can I bring that in the moment of crisis? And like write these things down for real, write them down. And then when I am challenged or when I feel like I'm being defensive, how do I show up? And is that really who I want to be in that moment? Is that my best self? Like, who am I at my best self? And so when you're able to identify those things, what are your assets? Who are you at your best self? What are the things that you bring uniquely to a crisis or a challenge? Then you can build all of your communication around those things so that you're exemplifying those things in your communication. That's what authenticity means. It means communicating with truth and in a foundation that is unshakable because it is undeniably you.
Love that. Great response. And for all the interns who were in that room the other day, I hope you're paying attention here. Speaking of paying attention, here's a real good segue for you. I know that your firm talks a lot about getting people to pay attention. So, what actually earns attention today versus even 5 years ago?
It's actually the same thing as 5 years ago than it is today. People remember what they feel and they pay attention to things that make them feel something. And that feeling can show up in two ways. It's either visceral or it's visual. So it's something that hits you in your gut or that your body responds to, or it's something that you can see in your mind's eye. And so as you're thinking about any sort of communication, the most effective will be visual or visceral. How can I tell a story so that people see what I'm talking about in their mind's eye because they will remember that because it is from their brain. It's not because I've told them talking points that they are going to hear and remember. It's because I have said something that painted a picture for them that they created for themselves. That's memorable. That's attention that stays. Or I've said something or created an experience that like sits in their body somewhere because they felt it in their heart or in their throat, which is a sign of sadness, or they've thought it in their stomach, which is a sign of fear or challenge, like, or they felt it in their fists that make them want to like go out and fight, right? There's some sort of reaction, bodily reaction to the communication. And so those are the two things is what I'm communicating. Does it have a moment that creates a visual memory for people on their own, or is it something that they will feel in their bodies?
That's a real gift to create a story that allows people to experience those feelings.
hmm It can be. And yet there are great words and lexiconography that you can use because they're tested and tried and true. And you can incorporate that into your communication. I also talked about the how, right? The how of communication. So it's not just the words. When I slow down and take a minute and really focus on the moment at hand, you're more likely to pay attention. If I get quieter, you're more likely to pay attention. Now, that only works because it juxtaposes with the energy that I've brought to the rest of our conversation, Dave. So I can use these things very strategically in terms of my voice and my body language and my tone and my volume. And all leaders can do this. This is something that all leaders can do if they're thoughtful about it. then you're going to create more impact.
Really good stuff here, Cass. Thank you. Appreciate that. It's like a Jedi mind trick.
A
So,
little
yeah, a
bit.
little bit. AI is impacting everything. I'm sure it's impacting your business. So,
Yes.
how is AI changing or changed communications and marketing strategy? And look into your crystal ball and tell us where you think it's headed.
We have been thinking and talking about AI since 2019. In 2014, we founded a conference called Social Media Day. And in 2020, we rolled it out as its own 501c3 nonprofit organization, membership organization. But in 2019, we had a guy named Chris Duffy from Adobe come and speak to our community because he had written a book in partnership with AI. Now, the book was terrible, but Chris was a very good and compelling speaker. And so we've been talking about and exploring AI as a communication methodology ever since then. We were early to develop a social media policy for our organization that is rooted in our values and beliefs. It's something that we do for other companies as well. And in terms of AI, the way that we think about it is that it is great for things like sense making. If there's an issue or a document that seems really long and hard to understand, AI is great at helping us make sense of it. It's great for doing research for sure, sentiment research. We're doing a lot of research in terms of tonality on certain topics or the way that communities feel about a complex project that's coming into their area. We're using it as well to be a thought partner. So we're working through, especially in crisis situations, scenario planning using AI, like what are three ways that this crisis scenario could go, and if it's going to go that way, here's what we're thinking will be the strategic comms plan, and it helps us run those scenarios and analysis. We're using it to do interview prep for our clients when they're getting ready for media interviews, because AI will give us the ability to really look at everything that a reporter has written and reporters who have interviewed similar folks and the kinds of questions they've asked and what they're looking for. But ultimately, it is this platform to help us do better, more strategic work. Now, that said, a lot of people are using AI in marketing to write social media posts or to write press releases or to create graphics that they're using in their advertising. That is not in line with our core values and how we are as an organization. And so that's not the way that we're going to use it or approach it. But everybody in our organization now knows also how to build their own AI tools. We use Gemini, we're within a Google environment, so we use Gemini, and everybody knows how to build a gem, which is your own little AI tool that you can use for repeatable processes. So, from an organizational perspective, we have gems for pricing and we have gems for analysis, and we've got gems for how to help us more efficiently onboard our team. We've got a knowledge base, an AI knowledge base where anybody can go and search for anything and they can find out what is our dress code like or what is Cass's cell phone number if I need to get her in a pinch. And so we've been using it in a lot of different ways and we really see it as an advantage. It's something that we fully embraced.
Yeah. And in the spirit of the communicating from within, even like in the spirit of Simon Sinek and start with why, you
Yes.
talk about aligning your internal culture with your external messaging. Why is that so critical right now?
Because all internal communications is external communications, Dave. Thanks to, that thing called the internet. It used to be that you could have a company culture that was one way and, nobody, sure, we had telephones, but like there wasn't a whole lot of like internet. There certainly wasn't Glassdoor. There certainly wasn't social media. There certainly wasn't online forums the way there are today. And so like you would have a totally different persona, public persona using reporters and media outreach. Those walls are gone, Dave. Like they simply do not exist. And what exists instead is this constant communication between your employees and your customers. And so, a point of view that we firmly believe is that when you're rolling out something that is important to communicate externally, you have to start internally. Because you know what's going to happen? Like the moment you announce something externally, your clients, your customers, they're going to call the people they know at your company and they're going to ask, "Did you know about this? Like what does this mean for me?" And so either your team's going to be able to validate it and contextualize it and help clients understand what's in it for them, or they're going to be like, "I don't know, nobody told me about this one," which is a trust destroyer, right? Both for the company and for that relationship. And so all internal is external. You got to start with internal. They absolutely have to be aligned. And so that's a lot of the work that we're doing today.
With so many great nuggets that you've shared with us today, is there a book in your future?
Dave, you know there is.
I do. I do. I cheated.
I've already written two. One is called Pay Attention. One is called Social Media is About People. And the new book is all on executive leadership, executive brand, and executive communications. So a lot of what we talked about today. Hopefully it'll be out before the end of the year. Fingers crossed. But this one is absolutely a work of love. I'm putting everything that I've learned as a leader and working with leaders into a book so that they can be better communicators.
All right. Some practical takeaways for the audience, as if you haven't already dropped enough knowledge bombs on us already here. But maybe one leadership habit that's made a big difference for you that you might recommend for somebody who's listening and that they can enact maybe today.
Yes, and it is a listening technique. It is listening between the lines. So, not necessarily for the words that are coming out from a person that I'm trying to help through a challenge, but listening for their hesitations, their pauses, seeing where their faces light up and get excited, seeing where they start to look away or they have some, communication of embarrassment or shame. Like doing this holistic listening has really helped me become a better leader because it's not just the words that people say. You and I can have a conversation. You're like, Cass, I love my job. I'm like, Dave doesn't love his job. Dave is like, I know you do love your job, Dave, but like that facial expression, if you're my employee, is like, there's something going on here.
But
And
yeah,
so,
it's like when you ask people in the hallway, how are you doing? And they say, living the dream. I have yet to meet a person who says living the dream and it has some sort of positive attribute.
yes. So we can take the easy way out, which is Dave said he's living the dream, or we can do the hard work of leadership, which is to really understand what is going on with that person or what is going on with the group dynamic or what is going on with the situation.
Yeah. One more for you. What is something that people underestimate about entrepreneurship?
One, everybody thinks they can be an entrepreneur. They very rarely understand the risk that entrepreneurs take, the financial risk, the personal risk, the reputational risk, the risk in terms of time lost with family and friends, the risk as it relates to never letting the business leave your mind. Never. The business is always there. And so it takes up a lot of space in your life. And people, I don't think, recognize or realize that.
For sure. I'm going to give you kind of the final word here, Cass. Anything I didn't ask you that you want to make sure that the folks who are listening know about leadership or entrepreneurship or communications?
I think one of the things that we all need to figure out as leaders is how we can elevate our group leadership and our leadership as and our culture of entrepreneurship. And the reason I say this, Dave, is that you've probably had this experience as well. We have people that come to the company who have some PTSD from their former managers or leaders. And it's like, now I got to do the cleanup on that, right? We got to do the cleanup to get them to a place of being like, no, 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 that thing that you experienced in that situation is not normal or healthy or the way that every company acts. And so that baggage that comes with them can be challenging in terms of them really integrating into a new company. And so if we as leaders take a look at our collective leadership and say like as Americans, as entrepreneurs, as a group of leaders, who do we want to be in order to facilitate the best, healthiest professional development of our new generation of workers? I think that would be to everyone's advantage. It's a little magic wandy there, Dave, right? Like I'm waving that magic wand. How do I get it done? No idea. But it would be very cool for us to, instead of, and a lot of people are in this place of complaining about Generation Z and how they act and how they interact, instead thinking about like, how can we as leaders show up so that that next generation of workers is prepared and ready and not something that we complain about, something that we feel great
Yeah.
about because
Yeah.
we are doing our jobs to
I'm,
lead
I'm,
that.
I'm with you on waving that magic wand. Again, something you said really resonated deeply with me about the PTSD from a leader. I had that and I know exactly what that feels like and like literal PTSD, like flop sweat, panic attacks, even in the next firm that I was with because of the damage that was done by this one particular individual. So take a hard look at yourself. And like you said, ask the hard questions of yourself. How can you communicate better? Not everyone thinks the same, believes the same as you do, and don't make assumptions that people are lazy or not listening just because they may be younger or older than you. Yeah. Cass, really, really good stuff. Tell the audience how they can find you and connect with you if they want to learn more about you and how they can work with you.
Absolutely. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Cass Bailey. I think I'm one of the easiest people to find on the internet. I'm very active there. Please connect with me. I would love that. Interact with me. I would love that. We also have a website, slicecommunications.com. And every month, Dave, we do a Slice University webinar on a topic that we think is valuable to the communications community. It is not something where we put up slides and just, talk at slides. We bring together a group of 3 or 4 experts on the topic to discuss in a robust and meaningful way and to exchange ideas some of these communications topics that are going to be critical for company success and leader success as the world around us changes.
Yeah. Cass, congratulations to you and all that you've done and achieved. And thank you so much for joining me today here on Behind the Numbers. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
It's been a pleasure. And thank you out there for going behind the numbers with us today. If this episode sparked a new perspective, and I know it has, please take 10 seconds, leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It's really a great way to help people find the show and help it grow. Until next time, I'm Dave Bookbinder reminding you that the numbers tell the story, but the people bring it to life. We'll see you next time, gang. Take care.